The night air in Willow Creek carried the scent of dust and lilacs as Emma Carter hurried through the small town market, clutching her worn shawl tighter. The world had not been kind since her husband died, leaving her with a baby and a mountain of debt. She sold bread, mended clothes, and kept her head down. But even her quiet perseverance couldn't silence the whispers that followed her. She's always begging someone for help, they said. Poor thing should just leave town. Emma never answered. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. At the far end of the market, she passed the feed store where Luke Weston, tall, broad-shouldered, and always a little dusty from the ranch, was unloading sacks of grain. No one knew much about him. He worked odd hours, lived alone, and never joined the men at the saloon. Some said he was strange. Others said he'd come from money but lost it all. Luke never corrected them. Every evening Emma saw him leave a loaf of bread or a small bundle of vegetables on the bench near the widow Jenkins's home. Sometimes it was a wool blanket folded neatly at the chapel door. He never left his name, but everyone knew. They just didn't understand why. Why waste your kindness on people who can't repay you? The butcher once asked him. Luke had only smiled, because someday someone might do the same for me. One cold autumn evening, as Luke was closing the stable gate, he heard hurried footsteps. Emma stood there breathless, her face pale in the lantern light. "Mr. Weston," she whispered, "please, I know this sounds strange, but could you pretend to be my husband tonight?" Luke blinked, confused. "Your husband?" She nodded, trembling. "Mrs. Langford, my landlord, she's coming to collect the rent, and she refuses to deal with women. If she sees I'm alone again, she'll throw me and my baby out. I just need you to stand beside me, say a few words, and I'll never trouble you again." He hesitated, glancing toward the dimly lit cottage behind. Her. A baby's soft cry drifted through the cracked window. "All right," he said finally. "I'll help." That night, he stood tall beside Emma as the cruel Mrs. Langford arrived, her perfume sharp and cold. Luke's calm voice and steady gaze silenced her usual scorn. Within minutes, she left, grumbling but defeated. When the door closed, Emma broke down in tears. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Luke shook his head. "Everyone deserves a little help sometimes." After that night, Luke often passed by Emma's cottage with quiet offerings. Fresh milk, firewood, a loaf of bread. He never stayed long, never asked for anything. The townsfolk noticed. "Of course he's helping her," one of the store clerks sneered. "She's young and pretty." Men always have their reasons. Luke ignored them, just as he had ignored gossip all his life. What no one knew was that years ago, he had been someone else entirely. Lucas Whitmore, heir to one of the largest ranching empires in Texas. But the war had taken everything: his brother, his father, his faith in humanity. He had left his family behind, tired of being praised for wealth he no longer believed in. Now, in this small town, he found peace in helping others quietly, anonymously. Winter came hard to Willow Creek that year. Emma's baby fell ill, and word spread fast. "Poor thing won't make it," said the tavern keeper. "Widows cursed." But Luke spent 3 nights by that baby's bedside, nursing him through fever, whispering prayers he hadn't spoken in years. By morning, the child's fever broke. When Emma thanked him, tears shining in her eyes, he only said, "You'd have done the same for me." The gossip shifted again, crueler this time. "They say Luke's living at her house now. He's probably after sympathy, or her meager savings." Yet Emma never defended herself, nor did Luke. He just kept helping, working, and disappearing before dawn. Months passed, and the town prepared for the annual spring festival, a time when ranchers and traders gathered to donate funds for widows and orphans. Emma was asked to bake pies for the event. She hesitated but agreed. She had learned to face whispers with quiet strength. On the morning of the festival, Emma noticed Luke wasn't at his usual place in the market. Instead, a polished black carriage stopped near the square. A group of men in fine suits stepped out, scanning the crowd until their eyes found Luke, standing by the old water pump. "Mr. Whitmore," one of them said, loud enough for all to hear. "We've finally found you, sir. The Whitmore family estate has been restored, and your brother's will left it all to you. The people of Austin have come to honor the man who saved hundreds during the war." The crowd went silent. Mrs. Langford gasped. "You mean that Luke Weston?" The men nodded. "He was Captain Lucas Whitmore, the hero of the San Angelo fires. He vanished after the war, and we've been searching for him for years." Emma stood frozen, the pie tray trembling in her hands. Luke turned toward her, eyes soft but shining with emotion. "I wasn't hiding from my name," he said quietly, "just from the world that forgot what kindness meant." Then he gestured toward Emma. "If anyone deserves honor, it's her. When everyone else judged, she trusted. When I'd lost faith, she gave me reason to believe again." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The same townsfolk who had whispered cruelly now lowered their eyes in shame. Mrs. Langford stepped forward awkwardly. "Mr. Whitmore, He stopped her with a look. "It's Luke, and I'm still the same man who carries firewood for widows." The men from Austin presented him with a medal and a letter of honor, but instead of accepting it for himself, Luke placed the medal in Emma's trembling hands. "For teaching me that small kindnesses can change the biggest hearts." Weeks later, the town changed. The same people who had mocked Emma began helping others, repairing homes, sharing food, organizing drives for struggling families. Ripple of kindness spread like sunlight after a long storm. Emma reopened her late husband's bakery, now called the Kind Loaf. Every morning she left a basket of free bread by the door. The sign beside it read, "For anyone who's forgotten that goodness still exists." Luke returned often, though never as the wealthy rancher people now knew him to be. He wore the same dusty boots, carried the same quiet smile. One evening, as the sun set over the fields, he approached Emma's porch. "Can I ask you something?" he said softly. She smiled. "What is it, Luke?" He hesitated, eyes warm. "Can you pretend to be my wife, just for the rest of my life?" Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. And as they stood beneath the fading light, the town that once judged them now celebrated them, proof that love born of kindness could rebuild anything, even the most broken hearts.